Members, it's the appointed time and we have a quorum. This is the Bills Committee on Kai Tak Cruise Terminal Bill. Now we have an election of chairman. You may refer to Appendix 4 in relation to the House rules. Now, a valid nomination is to be made by one member orally and seconded by at least one other member orally, and the nomination will have to be accepted. Mr. Lu Wai Kwok, I nominate Mr. Chen Kam Lam. Seconded by Mr. Andrew Leung, and I accept. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Mr. Chen Kam Lam is elected chairman. Is there a need for a deputy chairman? Let's invite the government to join us.
旅遊事務處咧就會有啲 PowerPoint 咧係介。
There is a PowerPoint from the Tourism Board to present this bill, and it will be tabled.
我哋歡迎商務及經濟發。
Let's welcome from the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, Deputy Commissioner for Tourism Ms. Rosanna Law, and Assistant Commissioner for Tourism for Mr. George Toy, and Senior Administrative Officer Ms. Carrie Lee. From the Department of Justice, Senior Government Counsel Acting Mr. Henry Chan and Ms. Queenie Wu. Deputy Commissioner, please take us through the bill. Thank you. This is a Kai Tak Cruise Terminal Bill. If you allow me, I will ask my colleague to go over the legislative intent and the provisions by way of a PowerPoint. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll spend a few minutes to present the bill. I'll first go through the background and then the objectives of the legislation and the content of the bill. Current status of the terminal. You might have been there. It is located at the end of the original runway. There are two berths. The first one was commissioned in June 2013 and the second one was commissioned in September 2014. There is still some riverbed work to be done, and at the beginning of next year or late this year, we will have both of the berths ready for large-scale international cruise ship to moor. About 70% of the floor area of the cruise terminal has been leased to the terminal operator for operation. Apart from the apron, from the passenger waiting areas, and also some commercial area. The remaining 30% covers podium garden, public colonnade, and other government facilities. Say, for example, and it's managed by an agent appointed by the Tourism commissioned. During non-cruise days, we organize different activities to put the place to an optimum use. We have the waiting halls and the baggage handling areas for various activities. And at the apron, you see this year we had the Slide the City, and we also have some car function. And in relation to the baggage handling area, there's some brand promotion events and microfilm promotion. This is the general layout of the terminal. Apart from the cruise terminal building, you will see the apron, which is boxed in red. And you also see an area for berthing that is dotted in blue. The area in yellow is the park. Is subject to regulation of Cap 132BC. The terminal was commissioned in June 2013. It was fully commissioned in 2014. And there are about 28 ship calls and over a period of 50. And for 2015, we have about 56 ship calls and about 70 calendar days. And in 2016, there will be about 78 ship calls over a period of 103 days. As I said, in 2013, June, the terminal was commissioned. In relation to security arrangements, is subject to Ports Facility Security Plan. This is governed by Cap 582, that is the Merchant Shipping Security of Ships and Port Facilities Rule, and also the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code. The security plan has been implementing smoothly. However, under this plan, there is no empowerment to anyone to take actions against misconduct within the terminal. That's why we would like to make use of this bill to empower certain people to take action against misconduct. As we've said, the object of the bill is to provide a legal backing for the regulation for regulating the use, operation, and management of the terminal, and to bring the legal framework for the regulation of the terminal in line with other ferry piers, say for example Hong Kong Macau ferry pier and the Hong Kong China ferry pier. We would also like to provide for enforcement power. In the bill, there are express provisions to provide for fee charging power to the government and terminal operator, and these fees charged can be higher than cost recovery level. There will be a designation of the terminal area. You will see it as depicted in the box in red. This area includes the terminal building, the apron, and the area of water body. It's about 100 meters in the water from the apron. Apart from designation of the terminal area, we also designate restricted areas to restrict passenger access. There are permanent restricted areas and non-permanent restricted areas. And the reason why there are non-permanent restricted areas, because we want to allow different activities to take place in certain areas in the terminal. During non-cruise days, we would suspend the restrictions on non-permanent restricted areas to organize different activities. You can see this slide, say on the ground floor, for permanent restricted areas, they are customs facilities and essential plant room. For car baggage handling area, we've used it for other activities, so we propose to designate that as a non-permanent restricted area. On the first floor, permanent restricted areas are essential plant rooms, and the concourse will be a non-permanent restricted area. And in the past, we have leased the concourse to production houses to make films or advertisements. So we would like to make use of the area during non-cruise days. Second floor, apart from the immigration hall, which is a permanent restricted area, during non-cruise days, security check areas and some concourse will be non-permanent restricted areas. And there are also some general prohibitions. Say, for example, unauthorized entry into the terminal area and restricted area. There's some breaches, say, for example, smoking, fishing, and posting of notices, say, for example, and others. We will empower certain officers to take enforcement action. They will have the power to remove, detain, and arrest offenders. That's the end of my presentation. I will be happy to take questions. Deputy Commissioner, anything to add? I'll just say that currently the arrangement is subject to, is governed by the Port Facility Security Plan. So in relation to restricted areas, issue of pass, clearance arrangements, and terminal arrangement, and the emergency contact person, they are all in this security plan. There is a fixed immigration, customs, and quarantine facilities. Say, for example, a computer with confidential information related to immigration installed at the terminal. There is also a detention facility. These will have to be protected. At the same time, we would like to build in some flexibility for the operators to make better use of the terminal, so that it will be used for other activities during non-cruise days. We've talked to other law enforcement agencies and taken into account our past experience in organizing activities. We do think that we can put in place a legal framework to strengthen the regulation of use, operation and management of the terminal, to impose prohibitions and lay down penalties. At the same time, we would like to maintain flexibility and to ensure smooth operation, which will be conducive to the development of our cruise industry. In this bill, after it's enacted, it will exist in tandem with the Port Facility Security Plan, and they are not mutually exclusive. And an important object of the bill is to expressly empower the government and the terminal operator to charge fees.
And the government would be, the operator would be empowered to charge a fee that's higher than the market rate or cost recovery level, and the operator can also retain the money raised or received. the purpose is that by enacting the bill, the practice at the Kai Tak cruise terminal can be brought in par with other similar cross-boundary ferry terminals. Mr. Loe Kwok, Mr. James Kwok, and Mr. James To, and Mr. Yu Si Wing. Thank you, Chairman. I want to know more on the need for the Kai Tak cruise terminal bill. I understand that under the current port facility security plan, there are certain restrictions and controls on the cruise terminal, and for other cruise terminals, they are also governed by other legal frameworks. We have the Hong Kong Macau ferry terminal, we have the China Hong Kong ferry terminal, and even before we have the Kai Tak terminal, we had cruise liners in Hong Kong, and they were berthed in Ocean Terminal in TST. So we understand there's a need for such facilities. If the existing legal framework has been in operation and has proved to be effective, why is there a need for a separate bill? I don't really understand the logic, so can you elaborate more on that? Rosanna, please. Thank you very much for the question. Right now, for our cross-boundary ferry terminals, with the exception of Kai Tak, we also have the Ocean Terminal, and that terminal has another regulation in place, and it's governed by subsidiary legislation 1023 of WAF TNT. But that pier is a pure, it's operated on a commercial basis, so the nature is rather different from Kai Tak cruise terminal. The Kai Tak terminal was funded by the government and operated by an outside operator. If we want the operator to operate on a commercial basis, we must have a piece of primary legislation in place to regulate its operation. For other piers, for example, the Hong Kong, China, Macau pier, or the Hong Kong Macau ferry terminal at Shun Tak Center, they are governed by subsidiary legislation under the law of Hong Kong. And the nature is similar as that of Kai Tak. And we wanted to regulate Kai Tak cruise terminal under Cap 313 of the laws of Hong Kong. But having received legal advice, and we received views late during the drafting stage that we need primary legislation. As such, we are tabling the bill in front of LegCo. I don't really understand the point. Realistically speaking, if similar facilities have been in operation for years without any issue, why do we need a separate bill? If we do have such need, does it mean that the existing legislation is ineffectual and need further amendment? We are talking about a new cruise terminal, and it was only in operation in June 2013, so we do need a new regulatory framework. For other piers, for example, for Ocean Terminal, it was governed by Cap 1023, and for the Hong Kong Macau terminal, it's governed by Cap 313 of the Hong Kong laws. But neither can be extended to the Kai Tak cruise terminal, and as such, we need a new piece of legislation. Mr. James, so I have a lot of questions. Well, I have more than 70. I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Low said. his point was very valid. Ms. Law said CAP 313 does not apply to Kai Tak. I'd like the government to provide another separate paper to explain why it cannot be applied. And they need to explain how are both terminals different. And for the ocean terminal, and it might, well, the Kai Tak might be different from the Hong Kong Macau ferry terminal in terms of the sizes of the vessels. The ocean terminal also receives big vessels, right? And you said they are different because you want Kai Tak to be a home port for cruise liners. So whether or not you want it to be a home port for cruise liners, does it really affect the regulatory framework required? Can you elaborate on this? Mr. Lo Wai Kwok was right in that, well, in terms of immigration, you need to set aside some space for customs and immigration, and some restricted areas are set aside for security purposes. You said one is operated on commercial basis. Well, I don't really understand that point because Ocean Terminal is also operated on a commercial basis. So the only difference is that Kai Tak is supposed to be a home port for cruise liners. Before the Kai Tak terminal was opened, we have seen liners berthed in the Kwai Chung cargo terminal or container terminal. Well, that's another issue altogether. That's a cargo terminal. So that's dealt with another piece of legislation. Well, I don't intend to raise all my questions. This is I will leave it to the later rounds. Whether for Ocean Park, MTR, or other projects, we need consistency in the legislation. Someone was singing in Kwun Tong Station, and the MTRC said it's under the MTR's premises, and as such, such activities are governed by the MTR bylaw. So where's the consistency? This is a huge project, a very big area, and a lot of members of the public want to do different things, not just playing the guitar. If you are prohibiting people from doing anything, well, the situation would be the same as West Kowloon. You're giving it to, well, the contract is huge. The public feels it should have the right to enjoy the public space. So where do you draw the line? They are very articulate, and they would look at the legislation very carefully. Can you allow her to answer the first part, please? The reason why CAP 313 and 1023 cannot be extended to Kai Tak Cruise Terminal, I think we can provide a written response in detail. And Mr. To mentioned quite a few points, and they are rather relevant to each other. The objective of the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal is to develop cruise tourism, and we want to develop it into a home port. There's a difference between Kai Tak and Ocean Terminal. In Ocean Terminal, they don't have permanent customs and immigration hall. and they don't have the essential plants, and they have no computers for permanent storage of information. So in other words, the equipment are not permanent in nature. But for Kai-Tak, we are dealing with much higher patronage, and we want to develop it into a permanent home port. If you have visited Kai-Tak, you might remember that on the second floor we have a big immigration hall, and we want to process 3,000 tourists per hour. So we do have permanent immigration facilities. We have terminals and e-channels and so on. We have port quarantine facilities set up by the health department, and we have X-ray scanners for baggages. We are obliged to check the baggage to make sure that there isn't anything illegal at Ocean Terminal. The subsidiary legislation does not have a lot of provisions on things that cannot be done in the restricted areas, and there are no provisions on the emergency facilities and so on. This is to ensure smooth operation at the terminal. Ocean Terminal is also operated on a commercial basis, so why do we need a separate piece of legislation for Kai-Tak? The reason is that Ocean Terminal has always been funded and operated by Wharf TNT. So they are obviously operated on a commercial basis. They are charged on a commercial basis, and the charging scheme is not regulated by the government. But Kai-Tak is different. We received funding approval from the Legislative Council, so the government is the landlord. And we are talking about a public facility. If it's operated on a commercial basis, we need legal backing. Or else all the funds received from the government should enter the public pool, and we are not allowed to operate on a commercial basis. If we are to operate the terminal on a commercial basis, the legal advice is that we need primary legislation. And on Mr. To's request, we would explain in writing that CAP 313 does not allow us to do so, because both terminals under CAP 313 are not operated on a commercial basis, and that's why we need primary legislation. Mr. Yu Siwing. After 2 years of operation, the government should have identified some problems in the terminal. For instance, the area is very big, and there are a lot of facilities. Compared to Ocean Terminal or the two cross-boundary terminals, well, it's incomparable. Kai-Tak is entirely different. I understand that it's difficult to have a clear-cut, policy, and we have seen liners berthed in Kwai Chung or other cargo terminals, and if we do not have new legislation, it's dangerous. As you all know, there isn't a lot of patronage on weekdays at Kai-Tak, but on weekends there are a lot of visitors. If we don't deal with security and operations properly, then there could be loopholes. By the time we see loopholes, it might be too late to introduce new legislation. So right now we are scrutinizing the bill, and we should have a bill specifically to cater for Kai-Tak. I understand that the government will provide a written response, so I won't ask further questions of the differences between different terminals. We would wait for the paper.
After the enactment of the bill, what about the operation and management? Because for some areas, it will be under the operator, and for some others, the government. Well, the operator is already managing the terminal anyway, but there will be changes in the division of labor. Will there be changes in the level of manpower required and also the cost or fees? There is already a commercial operator, it's WCT company. It's responsible for the management of 70% of the area, including all necessary areas, say the apron, luggage, waiting hall, luggage handling areas, 5,600 square meters of commercial area. Starting from 2013, under the management contract entered into by the government and the operator, they manage the area accordingly. They manage the rental that is to be handed to the government. You will find all the division of labor clearly in the terms of the agreement. The contract will go for 10 years. It's been 2 so far. In the coming few years, we will, based on the contract, take responsibility of different areas. And for the others, there is one part that is that is for the use of discipline services. Say, for example, offices or where they keep their archive, computer systems, etc. Government officers will be responsible for the management. There are also some common areas, some public areas, so to speak, and it's outside the management area of the commercial operator. We have engaged a property management company to be responsible for cleaning, for deploying security guards, and to deal with emergency situations. And as I said, the division of labor will not change. The level of manpower will not change either. It will continue to operate like today. And in the future, if the management company or the operator thinks that there is a need to increase manpower, they will make arrangements, but the change will not be a result of the bill. Mr. Yu, I understand that the provisions will be clearer, but the operation has been going on. What is clearer is just the enforcement. It's not the case that there will be additional cost as a result of the bill, right? That's right. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. I believe some other members have asked questions, and you might have explained about some of it. The terminal has been operating for some time, and it's quite rare that you only introduce the bill now, because it usually happens before the facility is commissioned. I think it's difficult for you to say that it is not something you have missed. Anyway, so was there a legal basis for the operation of the terminal? Deputy Commissioner. Thank you. I thank Mr. Sin for giving us the chance to explain about legislative work. Yes, the terminal has been in operation for 2 years, and it's a bit late to introduce the bill now. But it's not today that we've started doing the work. In 2013 July, in the Economic Development Panel, we have submitted a paper that was at the start of the operation of the terminal. We proposed to introduce subsidiary legislation under CAP 313, that is the Shipping and Port Control Ordinance. We proposed to do something similar, save and accept commercial charges. Our plan at that time was that after the report in July, if the panel agreed, and which was the case, we thought that at the end of 2013 we would be able to introduce the bill for scrutiny. After we've been to the Economic Development Bureau, the legal advice we've obtained was that we need to add an operation to say that the fees received over and above cost can be pocketed by the operator because there is a commercial element in it. And we've considered whether it could be put in the subsidiary legislation. But the lawyer said that CAP 131 does not empower the commissioner to run the terminal on a commercial basis. So it's outside the scope of 313. Subsidiary legislation under this primary legislation will not provide a legal basis. We did not have any other alternatives but to introduce a proper bill. That's why in May we presented an information paper for the Economic Development Panel, telling them that we need to use primary legislation to introduce the bill, and it's out of control. Mr. Sin also asked about what was going on in the past 2 years. When it comes to the security plan, it is governed by the Port Facility Security Plan. And this is based on the Marine Department CAP 5828 Merchant Shipping Security of Ships and Port Facilities rules. And what are included in the plan? There are security arrangements in relation to the terminal, about issuance and taking back of passes, clearance, and emergency contact with the operator, etc. And this plan has been implemented smoothly. So, after the bill has been enacted, it does not mean that the security plan will terminate, because they will exist in tandem. I have not answered all of Mr. To's question. I apologize. Well, if there are temporary berthing of cruise liners in any terminal or ports, there won't be any security problems, because wherever they are subject to the Port Facility Security Plan, because it is a duty under the international under international convention. But there must be a case when you have enforced the law in the past 2 years. Are you saying that there has been no such actions taken in the 2 years? That has got no legal basis. Perhaps when it comes to issuance of restricted area pass, is done in accordance with the security plan issued by WCT, our operator. These are issued to the operator's employees, supply vehicles, building management officers. Mr. Sin asked if there has been occasions when law enforcement was required. Well, actually, if necessary, our law enforcement officers are able to do so. Say under Cap 232 for the police, and also Cap 215 for immigration, and also port health control. And it will be better if we have a specific piece of legislation. But it doesn't mean that in the past there was no legal basis. There is already a port facility security plan. This Tony Jie. Well, you mentioned about a commercial operation. Some other ferry piers were mentioned. Is it the case that the operations are different? The cruise terminal is already operating. I don't know what comes first. Questions may be asked on this. Maybe you can give me more information. In your PowerPoint presentation, I see some plans. The plan details are too small. But we want to know the difference. Not just about the premises, but the water body as well. Because it may affect public use in the future. So maybe you can give me more information. You want the plans blown up? Yes. You'll find this in Annex 1. When we submitted the legislative brief, there is an A3 plan. Do you think it's large enough? If not, we have to make it larger, and it will take some time. We have A3 plans. There is an A4 one. A4 is a bit small. Perhaps we can make it bigger and then send it to members. If you can do it, maybe it can be done now. About a commercial operation. For Ocean Terminal and Kai Tak, they are similar. At the time when a cruise liner berths, berthing fees will be charged, just like when you pay rent. Services will be rendered. Facilities, supply are the type of services that will be provided.
If we want to designate it as a home port, then we might need to provide even more services. By home ports, the visitors can get off, and the cruises can welcome a new batch of tourists. And such services are provided by the terminal operator. And since the building has a lot of stories, we have to provide embarkation facilities for passengers, and we have to provide barrier-free access as well. And these are all services offered by the terminal operator. And in this regard, Ocean Terminal and Kai Tak are providing similar services. In Kai Tak, there are commercial areas. We have restaurants, we have duty-free shops, and rents would be involved. And the operator would can charge rents. And according to the sales volume, they also have to pay rents to the government. Before enacting the bill, the dealings between the operator and government are based on the tenancy agreement, and this is unsatisfactory, and that's why we hope to enact this bill as soon as possible in order to have proper legal backing. Since Kai Tak is predominantly operated on a commercial basis, there's something I still don't understand. Is it operated on a commercial basis due to the types of vessels for China, Hong Kong Ferry Terminal, or Shun Tak Ferry Terminal? Are they also operated on a commercial basis? We just want to know more. Can you give him a separate reply later on? Perhaps Mr. Chair is not very familiar with the tendering and construction of the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal, so can you briefly explain that to him? We promised to Mr. To, we promised to Mr. To that we would provide additional paper to elaborate why we cannot deal with Kai Tak via CAP 313. And we can provide additional papers on Kai Tak Cruise Terminal in other panels. Mr. Paul Chair, I want to delve into the details a little bit. Ocean Terminal is also a commercial terminal, and there are parking facilities. When I look at CAP 1023, these are all subsidiary legislation. These are all bylaws. And they have been in use for years. If you said that under the security plan, certain parts of the legislation cannot be enforced, does it mean that our terminals have not been properly protected by the relevant laws? Does it mean that we cannot carry out law enforcement if we do see issues? Is that the case? The Deputy Commissioner said that under CAP 313 or 582 or 1023, there are loopholes. Under CAP 313, the Commissioner for Tourism is not empowered to charge fees or operate on a commercial basis. So why don't we do something with Part 4 of CAP 313 on the empowerment provisions? Why don't we add a new provision or make an amendment to allow the Commissioner for Tourism to do certain things? For example, commercial activities. That would be easier and more efficient. Enacting new legislation is more troublesome, so I'd like to know the real reason. Thank you very much for the question. First, on the ocean terminal. In ocean terminal, there's no detention facilities, and all the customs and immigration facilities are temporary in nature. And in terms of security in the restricted areas, the requirements, the level demanded is different from Kai Tak. In Kai Tak, we have a big immigration hall on the second floor, and we have permanent equipment, including ID card readers, passport readers, and we do have sophisticated equipment, and we certainly don't want any trespassers who might damage such equipment. And we are talking about public properties. And with regards to commercial operation, Ocean Terminal was privately funded, owned, and operated. So it's natural that they operate on a commercial basis and no separate legislation is required. But Kai Tak Cruise Terminal was funded by the government, and if we are to operate the terminal on a commercial basis, according to the DOJ, we do need a separate piece of legislation. When we first received legal advice that we need primary legislation instead of subsidiary legislation, we shared similar views. We looked into CAP 313 to see if we can add something in there, and that would be more efficient. But according to legal advice, CAP 313 applies only to cross-boundary facilities owned and managed by the government instead of facilities in a private terminal. If we insist to do something with CAP 313, we have to see whether other provisions under CAP 313 have to be amended, and we might require even more time, and we have to deal with even more provisions. That's the sole reason. There's no other reason why we need a new bill. So, and I agree with Mr. Chair, we are not asking for troubles. But according to the legal advice, enacting a new bill is much easier and more straightforward than amending CAP 313, because by doing so we might affect the operation of Ocean Terminal and the Hong Kong-China ferry terminal. So we have no other consideration. That's the short answer. I'd like to follow up on the same issue. The Ocean Terminal has been operating for many years, and it hasn't faced any major issues. But in light of terrorist activities all over the world, it's time to step up our security. The Ocean Terminal and Kai Tak Terminal share similar patronage. So would you consider introducing the bill to Ocean Terminal as well to enhance its security? We have to deal with Kai Tak first because it's a public facility, and we require legal backing for a new terminal. For Ocean Terminal, it's a private terminal, and the owner would decide how it's developed. And as I understand, the Ocean Terminal is undergoing an expansion. If it is to have permanent clearance and immigration facilities, they might consider amending the relevant subsidiary legislation based on the Kai Tak bill. We are not ruling out such possibilities, and that might happen with Ocean Terminal. We are not ruling out any possibilities. Any other questions from members? I trust that we will have further discussions in the future to so that everyone understands why there's a need for such bill to manage the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal. Is there a need for us to pay a visit to the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal so that we can see where the permanent and non-permanent restricted areas are? Do you feel we need to visit the terminal? Some members might have visited the terminal a lot of times already. Is there a need to make a visit together? No? All right, so if we do have such a need in future, we can go there anytime. If we feel a need to make a visit during the scrutiny stage, we can try to arrange a visit. Okay, we can arrange a visit later on if necessary. Do we need to take in public comments? When enacting this bill, the government had consulted the trade comprehensively. So is there a need to invite public comments? No. So we do not require public hearing. For the next meeting, the tentative date is the 18th of November, which is a Wednesday. We have a meeting on the establishment subcommittee in the morning, so perhaps we should meet on another day. Maybe the end of November. Maybe we should meet on during the week of the 20th. Well, we will notify you of the exact dates. We won't do the clause-by-clause examination today because some other members seem to have more questions. So let's look at the bill, and next time during the clause-by-clause, we can raise further questions. All right, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.